Hello everyone, I'm Mark Suxford and I want to welcome you all to my new podcast called People Behind Brands, brought to you by Making Websites Better. Throughout the series, I'll be opening up my little black book of contacts where I'll be joined by an inspirational guest from the world of business, getting to the bottom of what made them so successful. In each episode, I'll be touching upon the highs and the lows that every professional has faced along the way. To never miss an episode, subscribe to our exclusive content now and follow us on our social media platforms. People Behind Brands. Life lessons from the world of business. Right, so for my next guest is a fellow Essex boy, astute businessman and marketing mogul of John Fowlers Solicitors. I've been looking forward to this one and I haven't seen him for a while, but it's always a pleasure to catch up. He's a good egg with his heart in the right place. Ladies and gentlemen, please be as thrilled as me to have this man on the podcast. It's Michael Kennedy.
How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. How are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. All good to seeing you and having you on the episode. So it's really good to see you. Thanks for joining us again. As a fellow Essex boy, we've crossed paths many times on a personal and professional level. Some of that we'll discuss in this episode and give our listeners a chance to get to know you a little bit more. It's fair to say that Michael is a young and hungry professional within the legal sector. He certainly knows how to work hard, but play even harder, where he's often seen patrolling the Essex area, driving his pride and joy, his beloved Range Rover. As well as, of course, his interests outside of the business world, which we'll come on to later. Michael has worked his way up the pecking order at his family business, John Fowlers Solicitors, where he is now the firm's head of marketing. So, Michael, take us back to the beginning. Where did your interest in the legal profession start?
Well, for those who don't know, and by the way, wonderful intro, I absolutely love that. I come from a very, very legal background. I mean, my godfather's a barrister, my dad's a solicitor, my mum's a judge. My dad initially started off doing criminal work and so did my mum. And at the time when you're growing up, and bearing in mind I was at a very formative age, and you're told that you're born, you go to school, you grow up, you get married, and then you're dead, and that's your lot. And then at such an age, hearing such concepts, I'm talking about 2 or 3, where I'd overhear my parents dictating, and hearing concepts about people perhaps not being happy in their own skin, people hurting one another. It meant I grew up with a very real view of the world. But with that was a fascination, because I mean, for those who don't know, obviously as a human right, you are entitled to legal representation, and for that you have duty solicitors. And my dad for years was one, and very much he would get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning. He'd get told you have to be in Harwich, Peterborough, Clacton. He'd have to go there, find out what our upstanding member of the society had done and why they were accused of it, and from there went on. And I mean, I've been fortunate to have that sort of work ethic instilled in me, where I'd go to school and there'd be other kids there whose parents, maybe were, and again, just for the record, my dad hasn't always owned his own business. It was something he very much worked up to. So seeing other kids around me whose parents own their own businesses and either were up at the crack of dawn to get into London, or could saunter up at whatever time they chose and have that quality of life, and being able to have these mixed views really, really did me a world of favors in that respect. Bluntly meant that, especially at school, when I wasn't particularly academic, I would go so far to say I hated school. I had some very good teachers, but I never enjoyed it because I wanted to be out doing what my parents were doing, and then suddenly realised, hold on, Mike. Whilst I did okay with grades before this, I thought, to be a lawyer, you have to have reasonably good grades, and I never, until the last minute, never really backed myself really to get those. And business was something that was very interesting to me. When Colin Dove, the firm's previous senior partner, stepped down and my dad became the new senior partner, of course, it became more of an interest. And then when my mum was promoted to being a judge in the mental health sector, it was all really fascinating stuff. But I knew that going to legal just wasn't going to be for me. And initially I was thinking, okay, am I going to be something IT orientated? And then obviously growing up, being a very similar age to you, mate, every kid wanted to be a professional footballer. However, being slightly more barrel-like, I kind of realised early on that it probably wasn't going to happen.
So we're talking about the family element there, and it's obvious that you've come from good stock. I've known you professionally and personally for a while, as I said before. But what would you say are some of the benefits and also the challenges you've experienced when working in the family business?
And to be perfectly honest, I mean, a lot of people who've come to the firm do say we've got a lovely family atmosphere, and because of that, we're quite relaxed with one another, and quite bluntly, our culture isn't as such that you've got someone over your shoulder the entire time. It's very much that you can get on with the work coming in. If there's a problem, you can raise it and go on from there. Really, it's a really nice, relaxed place to be. Equally, it does then mean that on the 2nd of January, when my dad told me he needed to isolate because he'd been in contact with someone with COVID, fortunately enough came back negative, that I then had to become the go-between between the office and his house, taking files to and from about 3 times a day, which, it was absolute chaos. But it's one of those things which perhaps doesn't come under the head of marketing remit, but at the end of the day, we're a business, and there's always a lot of things behind the scenes that need to get done in order for a business to run. And it's a lot that people don't necessarily see in that respect.
Would you say that the family element is one of the company's USPs? I mean, just tell us more about the business as a whole and the company's achievements, however big or small they may be.
I'd say it's massive. I mean, I grew up being very young, and the firm was tiny, probably about 10 people at the most. When I joined when I was 16, it was around 40 odd. And at the time, in fact, it comes into more your element where we needed a new website. And I was studying website design, and I just then was starting to pitch the benefits of SEO, then having marketing, social media coming off the back of that. And I was very much able to put my foot in the door, and basically was told, you can run with this to a certain degree, but obviously you'll have to report to people, and this doesn't take you away from everything else you're doing. So, and with that, I mean, we're now a firm of 70 odd people. I mean, I've been very, very fortunate to see firsthand a business really go through a transition of growth. And I mean, even during COVID, obviously it's been really challenging in that respect for a lot of businesses, us included, but ultimately it has shown what you can do without loads of face-to-face contact. And in the few instances where it is unavoidable, I mean, it almost feels like something out of an apocalyptic movie and I mean that in the nicest possible way, where you have a client come in, face masks, gloves, the whole lot, get everything done, and then afterwards the room just has to be decontaminated, which obviously it takes away from what we're doing as a firm. But ultimately you have to be adaptable, especially in times like this.
Yeah, so that sort of leads me on to my next question, really. So meeting people in person has obviously been a struggle throughout the past year due to the ongoing pandemic. I mean, how would you say John Fowlers have overcome those particular challenges?
I mean, obviously, we haven't been able to have clients come in. We had to open up an area in front of our HQ office where clients could drop off paperwork, then leave, we'd pick it up, get everything done with it, and then proceed to the next stage. But we're quite fortunate that with stamp duty holiday, don't get me wrong, we have many areas of the business, be it private client, be it family, be it criminal, but conveyancing has really been our bread and butter for the last year or so. And with that, it's really been so helpful. And again, even a lot of people who perhaps, especially now where it's unclear if the stamp duty holiday is going to be continued, but a lot of people who are actually thinking, you know what, I've been able to save some money. I want to buy my first property. Now's as good a time or as bad a time as any to get it done. But it's been hard. without a shadow of a doubt. And I've made a point of saying to those around me, I said, the only way we're going to get through this as a firm is if we go that extra yard for each other. This is going to be one of those times that if we don't help one another, if we don't communicate well or do all these soft skills, it's going to be a game finisher. And fortunately enough, I've got a fantastic group of people around me and throughout the firm who all are working for one another, which, again, especially this current lockdown, where, again, typically I'd have my own office, but at the start of the year, I was moved over to our sort of lovely HQ office, so I could get things from my dad, take them home. And also it was then felt with my girlfriend working there that it would be best if our entire bubble was under one roof. But equally, again, that it throws up different challenges, because normally I'll be chatting to you from the comfiness of my office. Now I'm being judged by my cat for talking to a piece of metal, or on my dining room table. So it's just about being as adaptable as possible.
Yeah, definitely. So as you know, the aim of the podcast is to delve into life lessons, all the highs and lows within your career and life as a whole. So what would you say are the biggest hurdles you've had to face in your career today? Obviously with Corona being about, but what would you say the others are?
I'd say, again, being from a marketing and sales perspective, and also being from, bear in mind, I won't name and shame the person, but when I was at school, I had one of my teachers who was quite a prominent figure within the school turn around to me and say, "You're never going to achieve anything. You're never going to do anything. Why are your parents wasting the money?" And that was just like, wow. Like, you've just said that to like a kid who's barely in primary school. And that's something that did stick in the back of my mind. And then when my first lot of GCSE results came back, let's put it like this, I needn't have actually bothered turning up to them. Like, the grades probably would have been a bit higher. But then obviously second year came back much better. It opened other doors. I guess at that point, when you go from a place that's so low to a place that's so high, ego is probably the enemy in that respect, where you can, and I mean, I'm very fortunate that I've got my own house. I've been able to put money away. I was able to buy my dream car before I was 21. And the problem is that with that, you tend to overestimate your own abilities, irrespective of how good you are. You think you're 10 times better than you actually are, which isn't always a bad thing. But with the ego side of things, it can be really horrible, because the highs are so high, but the lows are crippling. And if something, when I bought my car, I was very fortunate to be in a position to do that. But again, I had to, because I'd only got 8 months driving experience at the time, the insurers put me through every single ring I possibly had to go through. It had to be new. It had to have X, Y, and Z on it. And I thought, you know what, now's as good a time as any. And don't get me wrong, I'm very happy I still own the car. It's, in some ways, it did help, because a lot of people chimed into that and thought, okay, he's in a position to do that, he must be doing something successful. But then I did get a lot of abuse for it. A lot of people go, "Oh, Flash Harry, oh, he's a knob, he's this, he's that." And a lot of the people who were saying these things never met me, never knew me. I don't know if it was just because it was just conspicuous consumption and I'm quite a private person at the best of times. And whilst I didn't, as soon as I bought the car, I wasn't, getting my phone out and going, "Oh, let's put this on the gram and whatever." I didn't. But then when people found out about it, they got a different perception of me, perhaps one that I may not have intended. And again, when you've got people on, mostly Twitter at the time where I was involved with non-league football, people giving you their unbiased opinion of you. And again, I got it. It wasn't ever anything like a professional footballer would get. It was minor. It may be one or two or three people, but it did affect me, because whilst I was egotistical as hell, and that came across as being confident, my self-confidence was so low, because it was just the whole, as soon as anything was said against me, it was like, oof, it really hurt, like beyond belief. And I'm very fortunate.
I think any kind of online abuse, whatever it is, whoever you are, if you get that, then obviously it's not nice. And you could come off social media, but why should you have to come off a platform just because you're getting either one, bullied, or two, just a lot of aggro for something that you've posted? It's especially Twitter or something like that. It's very much about opinion. So if you can't share your opinion and people have to troll that, then more for them. But I suppose from a personal point of view, I remember you had a battle with your eyesight over a period of time. That must have been difficult to deal with at such a young age as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, not something I've really talked too openly about, where I've got a very rare eye condition called keratoconus, which when I was diagnosed, it was very much in its infancy in terms of the knowledge really known around it. It was known as as a degenerative eye disease, but that was it. Once you had it, you were going to lose your vision over a period of time. And that was initially, I was just at the opticians when I got told, where it was, we've all been there. Okay, what's the lowest line you can read? Okay, now, close one eye. And whilst there's always a little bit of difference between the two, the disparity between the pair was massive. And it's really, I was told initially, and bear in mind, I was 13, 14 at the time. And I was told, I'll come back in a year. We'll look at it then. And my mum went absolutely ballistic, said, no. So we've got two very close friends of ours who are the eye consultants for Colchester Hospital. We're going to go speak to them. Spoke to them. I was then seen at the hospital a couple of weeks later, had an orb scan done, and then was referred to East Grinstead, and was then told that it needed to be sorted as soon as humanly possible. And there was a surgery at the time called cross-linking, which was it wasn't as good as it is today. I've had to have the procedure twice. Well, first time I left eye, and that was probably the most agonizing 8 hours I've had in my life, because that was 8 hours of eye surgery where you can see everything. And that was just, I won't go into the details behind it, but it was horrible. The second lot, I didn't initially think I was going to need to have. I was about 18 at the time. Life was pretty good. Like work, the prospects were there if I worked hard enough. I just discovered what girls were, had a girlfriend in tow. Like life was as good as it possibly could be at that time. And then I'd been 6 months prior for a checkup, and they said, you may not need the surgery. And they wanted to take me off the list of being seen every few months. And initially I said, no, I really want to have the checkups. Fortunately enough, I did, because then 6 months later when I went back, and they said, it's degenerated quite rapidly in your right eye. You're going to be put on a list. We'll get you in at the nearest opportunity. And bear in mind, this was not private. This was all NHS. And, God bless the NHS, especially the last year. Because initially we'd look to go private, just see if we could get it done quicker. But because of the nature of the condition, no private hospitals were funding the research. So it had to be, NHS. And to be fair, I was at a centre of excellence, and the surgery I had would parallel anything in the world. Anything. It was absolutely fantastic. But then to be told, yeah, you need this done. Fortunately enough, it was about 2 weeks later, I had a call over a lunchtime from my dad, and he just said, can you come over here? And I thought, oh God, what have I done? Like, have I put a tweet out that's got a spelling error? It was all those little things. And my dad just said, I've had a call from the hospital. They can get you in tomorrow. And bear in mind, I was at college and other things. And I just said, look, it's got to be done. If it messes with my education, it messes with my education. There are some things that are bigger than money and education. I just figured the quicker I act, the more of my vision I can save.
Yeah, definitely. So it's good to hear that obviously you've made a quick recovery as well, and obviously it allows you to just get on with your job really, which obviously you're passionate about. So from business goals to saving goals in a completely different context, I'm sure you're equally as popular within the non-league football community, where you've represented multiple clubs as a goalkeeper and in recent years as a coach respectively. So just tell us a bit more about the other passion in your life, football.
I just feel that with work, there always has to be some level of escapism, and being able to walk into a changing room with a guy, again, been able to work in the women's and men's game, and being able to walk in a group of lads who are completely different from me, but actually it was almost that tribalistic mentality of being, it's us versus the world. I mean, especially when I was at Coggeshall, that was completely evident. Coggeshall United was the reserve team. Glen has gone off to do its own separate thing. However, town players were still signed for both clubs. I mean, including the great man himself, Olly Murs, who, I'll probably get onto in a little bit. And there was this misconception around the side where we had this massive budget, we had these amazing players, and whilst the players were fantastic, none of us were paid. And we were going up at the time against the likes of Hashtag. Again, everyone knows who they are. They've had a reasonable success so far, and by looks of things, that's only going to rise, be it on the other facets they have, be it esports, be it football, be it whatever. And again, we finished second to them in the league. Unfortunately for us, the final game was at their trophy lifting ceremony. They had comfortably won the division. We needed either a win to guarantee second spot or a draw and hope results went our way, which they did. But that was such a weird atmosphere. And I mean that in, perhaps strange would be a better word, and I mean this in a nice way, where it's not, when I've been back to some previous clubs, again, I won't name any clubs individually, some are nicer to me than others. I mean, some I've been heckled and called fat for literally 90 straight minutes. So I'm just thinking, okay, whatever. It doesn't really bother me in the same way. But then bearing in mind Hashtag's fan base of probably younger than the average football fan, having a couple of YouTubers sitting behind me or standing behind me, and then a bunch of 12-year-olds giving me abuse for 90 straight minutes. And it's only when I look back at the sort of the footage now I can laugh at it, because there's one particular clip you can probably see in the video, on Hashtag's video, very, very clearly, where one of our players was hacked down, and you just see me go, what? And in my mind I'm thinking, oh, I probably look, as if I'm quite tough. And I look back and I think I just look like a fat Teletubby. It's only when you look back and you just cringe a little bit and you think, oh no, that's not my finest moment.
Yeah, so with your recent spell at Coggeshall, you was obviously on their coaching staff, and it was well documented at the time that Olly Murs, as you mentioned just there, had involvement from board level to even playing for the club. So that must have been an exciting time for all involved. What memories can you share from that period of the club's history?
It was definitely a time of transition. I mean, obviously at the time, as you say, everything around Olly was very well documented, and I only met him probably a couple of times, and we never really exchanged that much. I mean, he was really, really nice from what I remember of him, but again, we both Town and United were trained together, and I never really wanted to be that guy going, hi, how are you? And be that over the, no one wants to be just the over the top weirdo. And he was always nice, and I remember turning up to training, and I thought I had a nice enough motor, but then turning up and having this Lambo parked next to me in non-leagues, I thought I was quite successful, but allegedly not anymore.
Just with pleasure as well, within your role as head of market at John Fowlers, you've managed to secure partnerships and links with Colchester United, which is obviously a club that you support. So it must have been a personal high for you.
Definitely. I mean, in a way, it was our first sponsorship with Colchester United that landed me, at the time, my marketing executive role, where when I was working around college, obviously, I was trying to I got in trouble lots of times at college for doing more work than actual college work, especially during lessons. But it was what I was more passionate about, as bad as that is to say. And it got to the stage where, again, the U's had just been relegated to League Two. It was the final game of the season of us being in League One, and it was, not a lot to play for. John McGrill had just been instated as manager, and I'd sent off an email to Colchester United saying what options are there. Unfortunately enough, they said, well, unsurprisingly, no one really wants to sponsor the last game of the season. So if you could, we'll give you X, Y, and Z. And the deal worked out quite nicely. But then they as a new sponsor, really promoted us, and I'm very thankful for them. And then with that, I was just about to head off to uni, of all places. I was about to go off to, depending on how things fell, it was either going to be Essex or UEA in Norwich. And I know saying Norwich around you is a bit of a curse word, so
it certainly is, mate. Yeah.
I'm sure you'll get the beep machine out. And I was just about to physically hand in my notice to our head of HR, Karen. And Karen is, she is lovely. She's one of the loveliest people I've ever met. But ultimately, because she's watched me grow up from a very young age, she's very realistic with me. And if something's not right, she'll tell me, which is not a bad thing. But again, perhaps when you're not, as confident as I am now, at the time probably hurt a little bit more than I cared to admit. And I felt really awkward. I was just in her office, just trying to look at shoes. I knew I had the letter in my pocket ready to give her. And she said, oh, no, it's a shame you'll probably be leaving us soon to go to university. You've done really well to start to build us a proper marketing portfolio. And I suddenly just thought, okay, well, how about keeping me on, like giving me prospects, full-time contract. And about 2 weeks later, I got a letter saying, we'd love to keep you on. This will be your job role. However, within the next 6 months, you need to pass your driving test. You need to sign up to do some courses and all that stuff. And it all fell nicely into place. And then following that, in fact, it was Karen who put me forward for a head of marketing role, where we'd got to, again, you'd met me by that point, either for better or worse. And I was doing a lot of networking, and it was getting to the stage where I had too much for me to handle. And Karen at the time, who was helping me with bits and pieces and was coming along to sort of marketing meetings. And I just said to her, I said, well, how about you, obviously you can be as close to it as you need to be. However, how about you let me run with it? I then create a internal marketing team to then supplement any, offsite agency we might outsource to for bits and pieces. You give me that title, which, to be fair, had been I don't know why it was, but that specific title was the one that I'd always wanted. And in reality, I remember being reminded by one of the other partners called Chris in the firm, who's known me for years and years and years. He said, Michael, at the end of the day, we could call you the Prince of Marketing. It may not even make a difference. And that stuck with me, because I thought, right, I've got to now prove all these people that actually I do deserve this. It was agreed that that's what would happen. It then got to the stage where all our advertising had got to the point where I could then justify taking solicitors, trainees, legal execs away from their desks for time periods here and there to either help me with events or even just do the meetings, which had been obviously the major worry. And it then really took off. I had a very, very good team around me. Unfortunately, then COVID happened. A couple of people decided to leave us. Unfortunately, their contracts expired. And it really, COVID really, really screwed me to a certain degree, where last year was going to be the year where we really secured extra funding from the partnership. I really wanted that to be the year where we show perhaps some of our naysayers that actually we are the real deal. We just don't perhaps charge as much as some of the others. Then literally January comes along. Right, this is the plan. This is what we're going to do. February. Right, there's this thing called COVID. We're not quite sure how it's going to go, but at the moment, we shouldn't worry. March. Yeah, that budget you had, that's now gone. You're being furloughed for 5 months, and we're not sure what's necessarily going on with the team. So, yeah, it's very much now been a pivot in how we do things. Obviously, it's much more online. I do miss the in-person element. I mean, you can't really beat that to a certain degree, but it is what it is. You can only play with the hand you dealt.
Yeah, definitely. So is it those partnerships and business relationships that have enabled you to become a popular individual on the local business networking circuit? Because obviously that's where I kind of know you from. You've also done some motivational speaking in your time. I mean, what topics do you present to those who are willing to listen?
Wow. In terms of the first point of the question of networking, I mean, because I was still having to very much prove myself, it wouldn't matter what time or where. If there was a networking event, I'd be there. I mean, I think probably the hardest one I had to get to was getting up at 4:30 in the morning to then pick up a colleague around 5:20 to then get to Billericay for 6 in the morning for a networking event there. But I was really burning the candle at both ends. But ultimately, the payoff did happen. You got to meet more people. Then suddenly, when it came to thinking of, I need a will, I need to do this, I need to do that, I was one of the names in their heads. And I was very fortunate that that the hard work and I came across in the right way. In regards to motivational speaking, I mean, I typically would speak to more college students. I mean, my college time was very fragmented with medical problems, trying to balance a fledgling career and everything around, saying that actually it's how much, to a degree, it's how much you want it. If you have an in to build yourself up, then if you want it bad enough, you'll get there, but you have to be prepared to sacrifice. I mean, 18 was probably the year where I went on God knows how many nights out, but then 19 through 21, none. It was literally a case of, right, this is what I want to be. I can party when I'm successful. And now, obviously, with COVID and being slightly more successful than I was, it's not going to happen for quite some time. But it's that whole thing of, if you want something bad enough, you can achieve it. And I know that sounds like the fake Instagram entrepreneur rubbish rhetoric that we all hear, but there is an element of truth in it. But if you bluntly want it bad enough, you can try, you can work, and it's more about not necessarily what you know, but if you can meet the right people. I mean, I was very fortunate that I last January, again, this might perhaps fly over a few people's heads, but there's a show on Netflix called $1 Million Beach House, as well as a show called $1 Million Listing. And I happened to meet one of the Nest Seekers UK agents, a guy called Chris Horner, really, really lovely guy, sells super prime in London. And he happened to just say to me, our boss, Eddie Shapiro, is flying into London. I've told him a bit about you. Would you be happy to come and, come down for a few drinks? I thought, yeah. So you're asking me to come down and speak to someone who's probably worth in excess of $30 million and owns one of the largest real estate agencies in the States. But no brainer. Was there like an absolute shot. It then transpired that I'd come across quite well. They had actually offered me a position, which I then turned down. Which I know a lot of people would say, well, you're turning down selling super prime in London. Are you mad? But actually, with COVID and other things, without knowing, it was the right thing to do. But also, with my dad still in the firm, and again, he's in his 60s now, I don't know how long he'll really be there till he retires. And with the firm this year turning 97 and a centenary on the cards, that's something that really motivates me at the moment to be there. Statistic exactly, but I think it was something 80% of startup businesses are gone and dead by year 5.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I respect anyone humongously at the moment who has the stones on them to set up a business and think, you know what, we're gonna manage it, we're gonna do it. And to be fair, I mean, there have been some, diamonds in the rough come out of it. There really have been.
Yeah, I think there's obviously been some businesses that have thrived through this difficult time, but there's also some, majority that have suffered. So from a life that has involved business and sport, what would you say is your greatest achievement or anything you've been proud to be a part of that you can share with us? If you could pick one thing, Michael, can you pick
one thing? Well, you know me, that's quite hard. One thing, I mean, this is probably going to be quite selfish of me to just think about me in this situation, but to be able to say I went from cleaning toilets and file scanning to having my own department within a medium-sized law firm, that's probably the proudest thing, especially from a kid who was told, you'll be lucky to be a bin man if you're lucky. It's just like things like that. And I look back and think, actually, you know what? Sometimes if you can have all the grades in the world and it can help you sail through, but actually sometimes work rate is what can set you apart.
Pleasure to have you on. You're a scholar and a gent in my eyes.
Thank you very much.
It's been a really good interview. I mean, we've covered quite a lot of different subjects from work to, obviously John Fowlers, but also your sporting interest as well with football. So yeah, it's going to be making one for a good episode, I think. Thank you ever so much for coming on again. And hopefully we can do another episode in the future when you're 50 and you've got your own real estate business.
I like the sound of that. I'll see you then.
Thanks very much, Michael. Cheers.
Thanks very much.
So that's it for this episode of People Behind Brands. I'd love to hear from you all, so if you want to get in touch, follow us on our social media platforms. If you like what you heard, please rate and subscribe to our exclusive content now. Join us next time for a brand new guest on the podcast as we explore yet more life lessons from the world of business. We'll see you soon. Ta-da!